In a thick, clinging fog along the Kursk border, a Russian logistics column crept along Highway E38 through Chernihiv Oblast, bound for the staging point at Oktyabrskoye, about 25 miles from the Ukrainian frontier. The convoy, a rolling arsenal of personnel and materiel, carried over 300 troops, plus artillery shells, communications equipment, and other supplies. To the soldiers inside it was a routine movement. But unbeknownst to them, every wheel turn and route the column took had already been shadowed and fixed by electronic targeting systems operating from across the border. At 6:10 a.m., flying at roughly 1,000 feet, 3 Mavic 3 drones from Ukraine's 14th UN Regiment maintained a broad triangular search pattern over the highway, their thermal sensors scanning the road and tree lines. On the operator's screens, the target resolved: 14 Ural and Kamaz transport trucks, a mobile supply hub supplying Russia's frontline operations near Chernihiv. Intelligence indicated the load was far more than ordinary resupply. The convoy contained around 300 rotating troops and a full combat logistics train capable of sustaining a battalion-sized tactical group. Manifest items were staggering in scale, yet specific in type. Over 600 boxes of 5.45 mm ammunition, collectively approaching 650,000 rounds, enough to equip a mechanized rifle brigade. A fuel tanker hauling 1,900 gallons of diesel essential for tactical mobility and resupply of mechanized units. More than 1,200 hand grenades, RGD-5, RGO, and F1 types intended to be thrown into bunkers and alleys. 2001 122mm artillery shells, tightly lashed and ready to feed D-30 howitzers or multiple launch rocket systems. Also aboard were communication suites. Examples cited include the R-168 system and Lear-3 jamming antennas, and several Orlan-10 drones stored cold, together forming the forward node of Russia's electronic warfare network. If Ukraine failed to interdict the column in time, these supplies would be redistributed under cover of night. This cargo was not merely freight, it was concentrated lethal momentum poised to surge into the already blood-drenched front at Kursk. The convoy had only recently slipped beyond the protective envelope around Suja, where mid-range radars and Lear-3 jammers had earlier provided a buffer. Beyond that line, it now moved into an open, low-lying corridor bordered by scattered brush, pine stands, and without observation posts, effectively a natural kill zone. With visibility reduced by fog and the surrounding terrain offering little cover or concealment, a successful breakaway would be difficult, if not impossible, once the column came under fire. Along the western forest edge, roughly 0.75 to 1 mile from the highway, Special Forces teams from Ukraine's 225th Brigade, Charlie, had taken up positions at first light. The ground there, low, damp, and overgrown, provided near-ideal concealment. Those teams had held still for more than 3 hours after UAV feeds confirmed the convoy's departure from Suja. Each small element, 3 to 5 soldiers apiece, had been arrayed in L-shaped crossfire formations, a classic configuration intended to close avenues of retreat and create overlapping fields of fire to maximize lethal coverage. Every squad carried at least one RPG-27 anti-tank launcher loaded with tandem warheads designed to defeat explosive or reactive armor and immobilize heavy vehicles. Each fighter also had multiple RGO defensive grenades with wide fragmentation and a strong blast effect, weapons useful to deny movement and seal off likely escape routes should dismounted troops attempt to flee. In short, the Special Forces layer was in place, camouflaged and patient, awaiting the signal that would turn observation and interdiction into a coordinated strike. At 6:13 a.m., from a field command bunker 18 miles southwest, UAV coordinators in Ukraine's 413th Raid Battalion watched every vector on a low-latency link. Moments later, an anomaly flashed across the reconnaissance feed: strong interference on the 2.44 GHz band. The Mavic 3's optics isolated the source, a Lear-3 electronic warfare module mounted on a Kamaz chassis, a system intended to blind control links, disrupt video, or force drones to crash. The Ukrainian network immediately transitioned to counterjamming procedures. Recon platforms engaged frequency hopping spread spectrum across multiple channels. FPV attack drones switched to IMU-based inertial guidance, relying on gyroscopes and accelerometers to hold heading. Control links moved to the L-band, less vulnerable to broadband jamming. When the system detected potential GPS spoofing by comparing inertial motion data to the falsified GPS input, an error threshold of 1.5% triggered an automatic drop from GPS and a switch to internal navigation. The result? None of the Ukrainian UAVs strayed from their flight paths. By 6:15 a.m., thermal imagery from the Mavic 3S locked 6 armored vehicles entering the engagement corridor, engine temperatures climbing, and infrared signatures distinct. Encrypted tactical feeds streamed to the ground fire control center. At roughly 6:17, the convoy sat approximately 1.1 miles from the ambush point. Within 10 seconds, the strike order was given. HIMARS rocket launchers in the rear were readied, overhead drones held targeting, and the multi-layered system began to execute. The attack force comprised one-way FPV kamikaze drones operated by the 413th Raid. Built for single, high-velocity strikes, these craft used 7-inch propellers and brushless motors, listed as 287 units, producing roughly 5.5 pounds of thrust sufficient to carry a navigation suite, battery, and a shape-charged warhead. An F-7 flight controller running custom Betaflight/Bella Flight-style firmware allowed precise pitch, speed, and path control. Onboard logic could classify vehicle silhouettes: Ural, Kamaz, fuel tanker, troop carrier, and seek structural weak points: air intakes, hood seams, cabin locks, drive shafts, welded joints. Under GPS denial, the drones relied on 3-axis gyros, accelerometers, and flight path calibration to hold target lock within about 5 feet. At 6 hours, 18 minutes, and 7 seconds, the first attack drone dove on the lead Ural. From roughly half a mile out, it pitched down to 37 degrees, accelerated to about 90 miles per hour, and struck an identified weak point at the left air vent and hood seam. Its 6 PB-shaped charge penetrated into the engine bay, producing a plasma jet that destroyed the crankshaft and transmission. The truck toppled, caught fire, and was halted. At 6 hours, 18 minutes, and 21 seconds, a second drone impacted the fourth vehicle, a Kamaz fuel tanker carrying 1,900 gallons, striking beneath the tank floor and 8 inches off-center. The resultant secondary detonation produced a roughly 40-foot fireball that engulfed the truck and shattered nearby glass. Russian troops began abandoning vehicles. Immediately thereafter, teams on the western forest edge opened fire. At 6 hours, 18 minutes, and 35 seconds, an RPG-27 from a Special Forces element struck the third vehicle, a Ural troop carrier, its tandem warhead, defeating reactive armor and detonating inside the cabin. Screams followed as occupants were blasted out of the bed. RGO defensive grenades were thrown to deny movement and seal escape lanes. At 6 hours, 18 minutes, and 52 seconds, a third kamikaze drone struck the command vehicle at the right side door, where the commander typically sat. Flames and antenna damage severed communications and disintegrated unit cohesion. By 6 hours, 19 minutes, and 8 seconds, 2 additional FPV drones hit the last functioning vehicles, one pierced and detonated the weapons truck's roof, triggering internal fires and sympathetic explosions. The other struck the logistics truck's rear left wheel and drive axle, breaking the shaft and immobilizing it. Within 2 minutes, the convoy was halted. Overhead reconnaissance confirmed 5 of 6 armored vehicles destroyed or ablaze, and the remainder disabled or abandoned. Ukrainian forces reported no casualties. The coordinated sequence detection, counter-jamming, precision aerial strike, and ground interdiction had converted observation into decisive effect. In less than 3 minutes, the entire Russian logistics convoy was annihilated. All 14 armored and transport vehicles were either destroyed or rendered useless. 11 trucks were completely incinerated, their steel frames warped and twisted beyond recognition. The remaining 3 were crippled, blackened husks with shattered drivetrains and blown tires, incapable of movement. Thermal imagery from the DJI Mavic 3 confirmed the staggering toll: more than 300 Russian troops killed or incapacitated, most within a 650-foot radius of the primary blast sites. Not a single bullet was fired by Ukrainian infantry. No direct ground engagement took place. The entire ambush had been conducted remotely, executed by UAVs and standoff strikes, all coordinated from beyond the range of enemy return fire. The aftermath resembled a stretch of hell, a 300-yard belt of destruction along Highway E38. Charred Ural and Kamaz chassis lay scattered more than 300 feet from their original positions. Fragments of tires, shattered glass, and melted communication gear were strewn across the road like debris from a rocket artillery barrage. Thick black smoke rose for hours, visible for miles. Highway E38, the vital supply artery for Russian forces operating in the Kursk and Kharkiv sectors, was now completely blocked. Russian units hastily cordoned off the area around Oktyabrskoye, attempting to retrieve wreckage and account for losses. The logistical impact was immediate and severe. For more than 48 hours, supply movements for Russia's 20th Army and reinforcement convoys from Belgorod were paralyzed. Artillery, ammunition, and fuel shipments were forced to reroute over 45 miles of secondary roads, dramatically slowing reinforcement to the Western Front. Strategically, the operation stood as a textbook demonstration of layered precision warfare, a seamless integration of intelligence, electronic countermeasures, unmanned systems, and special forces coordination. The engagement unfolded in 3 synchronized tiers. At the top, HIMARS batteries stationed deep in the rear, ready to deliver long-range precision fire beyond the reach of Russian counter-battery response. The middle tier, reconnaissance drones like the Mavic 3S, continuously mapping thermal and optical data, identifying movements, and transmitting coordinates in real time. The ground tier, the 225th Charlie Brigade Special Forces teams, concealed along the forest edge, assigned to eliminate survivors and seal off any potential escape. This was modern war in its purest 21st century form, a closed-loop kill chain functioning with near-mechanical precision. Infantry no longer stormed trenches or advanced through fire. They acted as the final lock in a coordinated strike system. No prolonged firefight, no territorial push, no human wave, just 3 minutes of orchestrated destruction. The ambush along Highway E38 demonstrated how speed, synchronization, and unmanned precision could cripple an enemy formation before it even had a chance to react.